You're listening to the podcast She Who Believes with your host, Vivian Bell. Great day. You're listening to the podcast She Who Believes, and I am your host, Vivian Bell, and I am indeed She Who Believes. So want to thank you guys for joining us this morning. I'm going to jump right in. The word for today, the title of today's podcast is The Breakdown. The Breakdown. So often in counseling and coaching and then just in life, you get to a point in the process where you have said yes and you are processing your traumas and all of those things where there's a breakdown. What do I mean by that? That place where you feel like you are falling apart, like as if, or really sometimes it's an actual physical breakdown, like you're crying, you're going through all of these things. And so often we fear the breakdown because we feel like that's at the point that we lose. That's at the point that everything just goes crazy and goes awry. But the truth is that the breakdown is the point of freedom. When we're able to give it to God, or just even fall apart without any knowledge or understanding of how we're going to be put back together, that is a place of major faith, because I am saying, you know what? I am willing to just let this go. That is the most ultimate point of surrender, right? And we are surrendering. We're saying, hey, I can't handle this. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to come back from it. Some of us fear that. Some people fear that. Like, okay, if I break down, what is going to happen after this? Because all I've known is to ever just hold it together and be together and, be the poised one and the calm one and the one that has the answers and all of these things. But when you allow the breakdown, there are things that break off of you, like the need to control. That's really a fear tactic. That's really fear being manifested in your life when it's hard for you to let go of control of things. You either have a fear that it's not going to be done right. You may have a fear that your family will fall apart, your marriage will be over, maybe something is going to happen in reference to your children and maybe they won't do the things that they need to do. There's all these maybes and all these things that we emotionally hold on to that we believe will be we're bringing freedom by holding on so tight. But the reality is that we're not bringing freedom to ourselves. And most of the time, when we're not aware of it, we're not able to adjust it and make the necessary changes that we need. And then that ultimately affects our relationships in a negative way, even though that's the opposite of what the intention of holding it together or being in control of everything actually is. Most people who are control freaks are people who have really good intentions. Some people who are control freaks they have ill intentions, like their whole desire is to manipulate, to destroy, and to do all of the things that the enemy has coaxed them to do or convinced them is the right thing to do, because they've chosen to be evil at heart. They've chosen to be bitter at heart. They've chosen to be vindictive and all of these other evil things, or things that are opposite of the fruits of the Spirit. However, when we are willing and able to break down, then we are saying we want freedom. So today, as we are preparing to go into our first live event of the year, it is entitled The Story of Me. And at this event, we're going to help people discover their purpose, process traumas, establish healthy boundaries, and so much more. It's going to include lunch. We're feeding you. We're feeding your soul. We're feeding your body. It'll include material. And for those who registered prior to yesterday, you'll actually get handed a physical copy of my support journal, Boundaries, Freedoms Line. Don't worry, if you registered after that, it's being sent to your home, so you'll receive it in the next week or so. I share that because everything that we do, we plan it out. We're strategic with it. We sit with God, and He gives us the roadmap of what He wants us to do. And so talking about the breakdown is something that I pray happens in the room on Saturday, because we need to be able to break down and allow all the pieces to be scattered so that God can strategically put them back together. And we can see that when we break down, when we feel like we're falling apart, we're doing that in the hands of God. And there's no safer place to be than in the hands of God. Well, this week's podcast is a little shorter than usual, but know that it is no less appreciated for your listening, that you are no less prayed for in this week. We are just in preparation of some things. And honestly, it's just one of those words that God gave me. And when I'm done speaking what he gave me, I wrap it up. That's really just how I function. So that's why sometimes the podcast is 15 minutes or 9 minutes or 32 minutes or 28 minutes, because I share what God tells me to share. And then when I'm done, I'm done. So I knew that it would be a little short coming in today. But again, here we are stretching our faith, believing God for the impossible. And you might be thinking, how is telling me to break down a matter of faith? Because it takes great faith to break down in the hands of God, trusting that he'll put you back together again better than before. Well, until next time you listen to the podcast, She Who Believes, and I am your host, Vivian Bell, and I am indeed she who believes. Now, I want you guys, before I go, I should have said this earlier, but here we are. Go over to the website, mindingwhatmattersnow.com, and subscribe, because what that's going to get you is going to keep you in the loop about the new podcast that's coming out in February, the second week of February, called The Recovery. And my mom is going to be joining me on that podcast, and we're going to be talking about life after heartbreak, whether it's heartbreak from marital or intimate relationships, whether it's familial heartbreak. There are things that break our hearts in this life, but how to move forward, how to strategically still be exactly who God called you to be in the midst of heartbreak, and how God uses that heartbreak to just heal you and those around you and in your community as well. So follow us there. You'll also get more information about all of our live events this year. We have several. We actually have one every month. And we want to just keep you guys in the loop. So be sure to register there and subscribe there. And again, we look forward to seeing you here next week. God bless. You've been listening to the podcast, She Who Believes, where we encourage you to stretch your faith and to believe God for the impossible.